For most Americans, the Iraq War ended when the U.S. withdrew its last combat troops in 2011. But with the recent onslaught from extremist rebels threatening to overtake the country, the Obama administration has deployed an aircraft carrier to support the Iraqi government and is reportedly considering drone strikes against militants. Iraq's re-emergence as a battlefront is raising the specter of perpetual war, a theme explored by new Repertory Theater. Its new play, Pattern of Life, examines the guilt and moral ambiguities facing a drone pilot who wages combat thousands of miles away through a joystick. Joining me now is Lewis Wheeler, who plays that slowly unraveling drone pilot. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So to get an understanding of this play, I mean, this is a look at modern warfare, and you play this pilot who's in a bunker in Nevada somewhere, who's waging war through his joystick, essentially. It almost seems like a video game. So what's the exploration in this? In
a sense, it is. They're in trailers that are air conditioned in the middle of the desert in Nevada, but they're controlling aircraft that are over areas of the Middle East. So it's a very intense sort of situation, because these pilots, they're not in harm's way themselves. Their lives aren't at risk, but they're still deployed with the aircraft that they're controlling. So it ends up having a very large psychological impact on their psyches.
And what kind of, as you prepare for a role like this, and we'll talk about your cousin who largely impacted how you're enveloping this role, but what kind of research do you do? Did you have the opportunity to talk to actual drone pilot operators?
I didn't talk to anyone directly. Our playwright, Walt McGuff, did. He interviewed someone, but there's a lot of stuff online and some interviews with former operators. The Air Force doesn't like to call them drones because that implies no one's flying them. They call them remotely piloted aircraft, RPAs. But there's a lot online with people who were in those situations. And it's very intense, because they're also very much isolated in their situations where they are. They're not with the sense of community and brotherhood that a lot of people have when they're in combat situations. And also with their lives not being at risk, they fly their missions, do what they do. They'll leave and drive 20 minutes and be home with their families.
Having possibly just caused major havoc in a whole other anonymous region, anonymous to them, region of the world.
Exactly, right.
You were inspired by the death of your first cousin who died in the first Gulf War. He's somebody who you obviously were very close to growing up. Yeah. How has that played into how you play this part?
Yeah, I'm an only child, so he was really like an older brother to me, and he was in the Air Force. He flew cargo planes, C-141s, which are large, aircraft. But I was able to visit him at McChord Air Force Base, and actually was in a flight simulator with him. He took me in, and he really, I looked up to him in many ways in my life. And he was killed. It was actually right after the Gulf War, but it was in a mid-air refueling exercise that he was. 2 planes collided, and 13 airmen were killed in 1992. So obviously, it had a huge impact on me, and just his loss really, affected me and my family as one of the first real tragedies that I ever experienced. So,
I mean, the play is opening tonight, so I haven't seen it yet. But my sense is that it's all about processing the humanity that's injected into war. When again, it's so anonymous. So is that something that you, as you considered your cousin's death and why it may or may not have been necessary, is that something that comes into playing that role?
Exactly, and the play, I should just lay it out, it's my character, and then the other character is a villager in Pakistan, played by Nail Nasser, and the play just goes back and forth between the two of us. So it is about these two characters and their humanity who never meet, but they do have a couple of shared dream sequences, and really is about the sort of the human connection, or in this case, lack thereof, or struggling for some kind of connection, when it's really an adversarial relationship. So yeah, so my growing up with my cousin, and that sort of all those feelings of family and then loss figure into this, because it's all just that sort of the fragile nature of life.
Over the years, I've seen a lot of plays about war, especially in contemporary times and our contemporary conflicts, not do well at the box office when it's a film, not necessarily do well at the theater. Do you find that there is a difficulty to mirror our times on stage as they're unfolding?
I think it's a challenge for sure. I mean, especially just in the news, as you were explaining in the intro, but also there was a couple of drone strikes in Pakistan just last week, and there hadn't been any since December. So It's hard because I think it is very fresh for people, but I think that also makes it kind of compelling because it's what's happening right now. And in fact, Walt, the playwright, has in the program, time, the present, right now, right this second. And I mean, it's actually happening. There's drones flying, overhead right now. So I think that makes it exciting.
All right. Well, Louis Wheeler, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.